I'd like to talk about follow-up. Follow-up is something that I find in this country is almost never done. And I'm not sure why. It's potentially because people feel that they're too embarrassed to follow up, it's too pushy to follow up, or, to be honest, I think that people generally are just too lazy to follow up. They might not even have the information in order to follow up, because what I find commonly is that people aren't even recording the leads that call them. And the person only becomes real once you create an appointment with them. How can you possibly follow up on people who phoned you and you didn't collect the information from them? You didn't get their name, you didn't get their phone number, you didn't get their email address. You can't possibly follow up in those circumstances. So what I teach in my telephone sales training is getting that information first, making sure that whatever happens on that telephone call, whether it's successful or whether it's somebody who wants to think about it, a maybe, or just a flat outright no for now, you have the information in order to follow up. So I often ask a question to people in sales training. If you had 1 hour a day, okay, and that's usually what it takes. If you take 1 hour a day and follow up with your clients, okay, people who phoned you and haven't closed, who would you follow up with? Now, first of all, most people would probably never use an hour a day to follow up, which is unfortunate because I've noticed and measured that when you follow up, you can increase your conversion rates by 5, 10, 15, 20%, which makes a huge impact on the ability to generate income from people who call you and to turn your marketing expenses into real profit. So following up is important. But if you had an hour, who would you follow up with? The problem is that people just don't simply know. And why? Because they haven't asked the prospect any questions. They don't know the difference between the prospect who phoned them at 9 a.m. in the morning and the prospect who phoned them after lunch. They have no idea what the difference is. Why? Because they didn't ask the prospect any questions. They don't have a file on this prospect. So here's how you decide who to follow up with. First of all, follow my process in understanding how to actually ask questions of a prospect, record that information in some kind of database. Then, for 1 hour a day, go back to that database and start going through your list of follow-ups for that day. How do you know it's for that day? Because when you actually had the initial conversation on the telephone, you promised that person that you were going to follow up on that day. So on that day comes up a whole bunch of reminders that these are the people you're going to follow up with. So, okay, you've got your hour. Who do you follow up with first, right? Who do you spend that hour, that precious hour with? Well, first of all, you need to contact people who have the financial resources to purchase your product. There's no sense in calling people who have no money. Eventually, and people, aren't always honest with this. You've got to understand that. But if we've done a good job of asking questions, if we've done a good job of understanding who this prospect is, we have a pretty good idea as to who is financially capable of affording your service. Did they just bulk at price? Were they only searching for the cheapest option? That's probably not good follow-up material. Did they say to you, the reason I don't want to actually have an appointment is because I have no money? Well, that's probably also not very good follow-up material. So you want to follow up with people who have the money to purchase your product. That's a good use of time. Another thing you want to follow up with people who have the authority to make a purchase decision. There's no sense in following up with somebody who isn't able to make a decision on behalf of themselves or someone else that they're working with. So if it's a business, you need to be speaking to the decision maker. There's no sense in following somebody who can't make a decision to actually take you to the next level. If it's a personal situation, you need to be following up with the person who has the ability to decide whether or not to come in with them for an appointment. It can be a joint decision, but that person needs to have a certain amount of influence in that relationship in order to make that appointment happen. You also need to follow up with people who have a genuine emotional desire to enjoy the benefits of your product. How do you know that? Well, if you spend time and energy asking the questions that I teach you in my initial telephone sales training, you would know who has which motivations for purchasing your product. And it makes sense to follow up with people who have the right motivations to actually spend time with you, sit in an appointment, and potentially decide that they want your product. If you don't know that, then you don't know whether or not you should follow up with them or not. So getting that information is critical. Fourth, you want to make sure that they have an interest in purchasing in the near future. So how do you know that? Well, in the initial telephone conversation, one of the last questions you asked is, assuming everything worked out, assuming we could address these concerns, when would you want to purchase this product? When would you want to come in for an appointment? You got a date. You didn't get something wishy-washy like sometime in the future. You got an actual date or a time frame that you can say, okay, this prospect wants to book something or wants to buy something or wants to be owning something in the next 2 weeks, in the next 3 weeks, in the next month. Those are the prospects you want to follow up with first because they're hot on the market. And what you want to do is you want to take them off the market as quickly as possible. What I've seen is that as soon as you get somebody into an appointment, they stop shopping. Why do they stop shopping? Because shopping is no fun. Shopping takes time, it takes energy, it takes a lot of cost. So what people really want to do is they want to stop shopping as soon as possible and get down the process of buying. That's why they're buying in the first place. So that's what you're aiming to do. You're looking for people who are interested in purchasing your product in the near-term future, and you need to be able to know when that is. You also want to be focusing on prospects who are actively searching for the types of things that you sell. That's why I don't really like to recommend a lot of cold calling. When I talk about making outbound calls, I'm not talking about going through the phone book, picking some names and numbers and just picking up the phone and calling people. That's an exceedingly wasteful situation. And it's soul destroying in the sense that when you make these calls and continuously get no after no after no, well, it's probably not the best way to sell a professional service. The best way to sell a professional service is to talk to people and follow up with people who are already in the market for your product. So in other words, they've signed up for seminars, they've potentially booked an appointment before and maybe didn't make it, or they've signed up for an email newsletter, or they requested a white paper from your website. Those people are actively engaged in trying to understand your product and trying to understand whether or not it's right for them. Those are people you want to be following up with. Lastly, another big important group of the people that you want to follow up with are people who've been referred by friends and family. Those people, referrals, are going to have the most likely chance of actually purchasing your product and actually visiting you for an appointment. So those people have to take priority because it's the people that already trust you because their friend, family member, or colleague at work said to them, if you want to buy this product, you need to go see these people. Those people you need to focus on to follow up with. And those are the rules. So consider who you want to follow up with. If you had 1 hour a day, how are you going to use that hour? It all begins with information. Without the information that you collected on the telephone call to begin with, you'd have no idea. So that's the process. Follow the initial telephone conversation and then spend 1 hour a day following up on your most likely prospects.